Hello and welcome to the Particular Baptist Podcast. My name is Daniel Vincent. I'm here with my co-host Sean the Sheep Cheatham. And today we're going to be doing this episode a little off the cuff. We did have a scheduled guest for today, but he does not appear to be able to make it. So we're going to be taking a little bit of a deviation from what we normally do and talk about the episode, or not really episode, but the podcast and the ministry of the Particular Baptist kind of at a strategic level and a high level, and give our listeners a view of where we see the show going and a little bit of history about the Particular Baptist as a ministry. So again, this will be kind of off the cuff, but I think it would be helpful for our listeners to kind of see where we're going, and especially going into the new year, what topics are we going to be talking about, or do we see talking about? So yeah, and with that, I'll let Sean kind of take us into our brief discussion today.
Yeah, so like we said, this is a little off the cuff. We just put together the outline of this in the past 10 to 15 minutes. But hopefully it's still beneficial to the people that listen to our podcast regularly. So I guess we should probably start with just a little bit of the history of the podcast and the Particular Baptist in general. Dan is was the original creator of the Particular Baptist Facebook page. I think that's the first incarnation of the Particular Baptist.
It was June 2019.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like that long ago,
Mm-mm.
but or feels like it should be older. I don't know, something like that. But at some point, Dan was posting regularly, and I had an idea that I wanted to post, I guess, on Reformed Baptist history. And so I asked Dan, "Oh, hey, can I post this to your page to get a wider reach?" And Dan was like, "Yeah, sure. You just want me to make you an admin?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." So we ended up running the page. At some point, we decided we should have a blog. I don't even remember exactly how that came about.
So that I think was back in March.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was around the time my third. I think I was sitting in the hospital after my third child was born, and it just kind of dawned on me, like, oh wow, let's do a blog. Why don't we do this? I'm sitting here, my wife's sleeping, baby's sleeping, and just sitting here doing nothing. It's like, oh, why don't we just start a blog? And that kind of took off from there.
Mm-hmm. Shows you what kind of person Dan is. Where his child's been born. He's like, how am I? What are we gonna do here? But and then as we were writing, two of our friends from church, Andrew and Travis, who have both been on the podcast, they wanted to get in on that. So we all decided that we would write blog posts and we would review each other's to make sure that they met at least some sort of standard and that they didn't have any errors and all that. And we try to do that at least once a week. We were doing it twice a week at one point, but that got to be a little much even for the four of us. And then we did decide to do a podcast, and I don't remember how that started, to the point where I remember Dan is like, "Oh, remember how we were going to start that podcast?" And I was like, we did. Oh yeah, we did. I just barely remembered it.
I think that might have been around the same time we started
mm-hmm.
the blog that I had brought that idea to you,
mm-hmm.
but I couldn't start right away. And then I think we had our first episode back in May, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been doing this almost 6 months now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a great way to get a wider reach on your topics. When you're doing blog posts, that's all good and fine. Those take a long time to prepare, and you can't always articulate what you want to articulate in a way that you can do when you're speaking. And I think that articulating things in that way is a little bit better than just simply writing. But I think both of those platforms kind of complement each other. So you're kind of some people like to read, especially maybe in places where they maybe don't have good internet or they can't watch videos. Sean and I were just talking in our latest blog post, the second most reads or views of the latest post was from China. So, we're seeing readers from around the world reading our stuff. So, we're humbled by that. It's great to see that other people around the world are getting our materials out there, and we want God to be glorified in that. This isn't about us. If this becomes a numbers game, who can who can get the most numbers on their podcast or whatever. If that's all this is about, then our heart is in the wrong place. So we don't want that to be at all. We want this to be about glorifying God. We want this to reach people to get biblical Orthodox Reformed theology in the hands of people in an easy format, like listening to a podcast or reading online. And that's kind of where we try to hit from both sides. We try to go maybe to the immature Christian who is learning and growing in Reformed theology, especially more from a historical, particular Baptist vein, where that's our focus, obviously. And then even the mature Christian who's looking for meat. We talk about deep topics like divine simplicity or the Trinity, things like that are very difficult topics to grasp. So, trying to kind of hit all of these different facets, I think, is important. And that's really where we see the show going, I think, and the ministry as a whole. We want to get material into the hands of people, believers, and even non-believers. We hope that non-believers who listen to this God can use this to save them. And we see this as not as a parachurch ministry, but as a ministry grounded in our local church. That's kind of an outreach, if you will, of our local church.
Yeah, exactly. As particular Baptists, we have a very high view of the local church, and we want to be subjugated to that.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, this might breach a little bit into the next subject, but we're going to try to have either our pastor on at some point or another pastor, a Reformed Baptist pastor within Virginia, on to talk about a topic.
Just a topic, Sean. Just one topic.
Well, we're not gonna specify yet.
All right.
We'll leave that juicy little carrot hanging out for people.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Yeah. So kind of along that strategic vision of where we see the show going, we're just going to lay out very briefly kind of what some of the shows or episodes we see coming, going into the end of the year and into the next year. This is kind of going to be a new dawn for the show, being, I guess, kind of starting the new year with the show not even being a year old. So we're going to kind of take a different approach with this. But as it's already been advertised, next week, Lord willing, we will have Dr. Leighton Flowers and Eric Hernandez on the show. And we'll be discussing provisionism and things regarding that, God's decree, man's state, sin's authorship, and probably other topics as well. So looking forward to that. That's going to be a big episode.
And then, not to disappoint people, but I will actually not be on that episode. Travis Rogers, who's been on the podcast before, will be taking my place for that.
Sean forfeited his right as co-host.
That is not true. No, Travis really wanted to be on for this interaction, and I'm actually preparing to teach the very next day after the podcast we would record the podcast. So I gave up my slot for that. That would be a big deal.
I get that, Sean. Gotta have that time to study and prepare and get your mind ready. Exactly. I get that.
Not that you should be doing all your prep the day before, but it would be helpful to have that day.
Yeah. Yeah. So Travis will be on the show, and Travis has actually interacted with Leighton. There's an episode that Dr. Flowers did with Derek Morrell, who was on our show not too long ago, which Travis and Sean, whom they interviewed. And so he had some interactions with him. So Travis thought it would be good to be on the show and kind of help, bridge the gap, if you will, and kind of set the tone for the episode. So he'll be on, and hopefully that'll be a fruitful discussion. And we're not bringing them on to bash them. We disagree with them. We have strong disagreements with them, but hopefully it can be a cordial episode where we can discuss our disagreements in a biblical way. So, and then the 12th, we're going to see about having our own pastor on. This was actually just kind of off the cuff, so we'll see how that goes, but we would like to do that.
he knows that he knows that we want to have him on, but we hadn't told him a date yet. So if he listens to this before we talk to him tomorrow, he might be a little surprised.
Yeah, we're not pinning him down just yet. It's tentative. And then the 19th of December, we're looking to do a Christmas episode in line with the season. And I guess we could have done a Thanksgiving episode, but it is what it is. But yeah, we'll do a Christmas episode on Advent or whatever we go with that. The 26th, we're looking to do an episode on dispensationalism, touchy topic, particularly as it relates to John MacArthur. And we're going to do, I think, a discussion on that. And I think that'll be very fruitful and helpful. That's a touchy topic today, even in reform circles. And then starting in January, we're going to take the month of January to go through an Orthodox Catechism by Hercules Collins. This is a very good little book that lays out the Reformed faith, really just biblical Christianity in a very short catechism. Hercules Collins was one of the signers of the 1689 London Baptist Confession of Faith. And I think this will be very helpful to go through. So we're going to take the month of January. It's 5 weeks in January. So it'll be 5 episodes where we go through this and pick some topics, questions, chapters, whatever we go through to discuss that.
And then we do have a couple other floating ideas. At some point on the Facebook group or page, not group, we had solicited requests for topics. So we're gonna be talking about potentially homosexuality. That'll be an interesting one. That might
watch us get censored.
Yeah, that might be the one that gets us off Facebook. But even if we lose that Facebook page, the blog and the podcast are not going away. We're also planning on doing one on Eastern Orthodoxy at some point because I have several friends that engage with Eastern Orthodox people quite a bit. And it's not something that there are a lot of Reformed resources from a Reformed perspective critiquing Eastern Orthodoxy. So I felt that would be a little bit helpful. And then we're going to try and schedule another podcast with a Reformed Baptist pastor in our state.
Yep. So that's kind of a high level overview of where we're seeing the show going, especially coming into the new year. So very short episode today. Again, it's kind of off the cuff given we hadn't prepared anything alternative to what we had with our previous appointment, but hopefully it's beneficial. It can give you, our listeners, something to look forward to as we go, and continue to, pray for us as we continue this ministry, that God would give us wisdom as we decide what topics to talk about, and that we would do so for His glory. And feel free to share if there are any topics that you would like us to discuss specifically. I know we've kind of put the feelers out there before, but if there are any topics you would like discussed, feel free to put them on the page, message us on the Facebook page, or whatever. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Feel free to post to any of those platforms on our pages and let us know what you would like us to talk about, because we're always looking for topics. We don't necessarily have a store of topics to talk about. Sometimes it's on a weekly basis that we're deciding what to talk about. Like, okay, what are we going to talk about next week? So please send ideas our way. That helps us a lot. That will be very helpful. But with that, Sean, did you want to add anything else?
No, just the Lord bless you guys. Thank you for listening to our podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Lord willing, we will be on next week. Take care.
Have a good one.